Hi, everyone. I'm here with Kylee and Nicole, and today we're going to talk about post-recovery nutrition. And so I'm excited to have that conversation. We haven't been together in a little bit, but I always enjoy having our talks. So how are you guys
Yay.
doing?
Good, good. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yeah, excited to chat about this. I feel like it's a topic that we get a lot of questions about and it can have a big impact on performance and especially going into people's race seasons this year, getting into your training and having a good pre and post workout routine and eating enough protein for recovery is important.
It is. And I think too that people don't realize that their pre-nutrition is also part of their post-nutrition. So their pre is just about as part as their recovery as their post is. And a lot of people, I think, don't find that as important or feel like they can get away with less, especially if they're just fueling during. So I think emphasizing the importance of that pre is just really important too.
I think that's good. I have a lot of athletes that, go out on a fasted run
Sure.
and then, they're not recovering as quickly or their run doesn't go as well as they hoped because they're basically out of calories going into a run. So maybe we could talk about that a little bit. Like when and what should we be doing before, let's say a long run?
Yeah. Well, and I just want to comment even on that comment of, if you're going out for a fasted run, like what is your objective? What's your intention? What do you actually want to get out of that? And if it's a training run, again, what's the intention? What's the objective? What are you hoping to get out of going into something without fuel? Again, that's another preconceived idea, that our body just instantly burns all of our body fat whenever it doesn't work that way. You will burn a lot of muscle. And then that will essentially make you slower or weaker, or again, not recover well. Immunity starts to go down. I just had to make a comment around that because, again, pre and post nutrition is where it's at.
Yeah. And I think that, for some people, they're doing it purposefully. Some people, it's about time. And so
Sure,
they don't
totally.
value the time of to take in some nutrition before a run. And so it's not about that they really don't think it's a good thing. They just don't take the time to do it, right? So maybe today we can come up with some quick, easy ways for you to get that in and get on a run so that you're feeling good.
Well, Kylie, what do you even tell? Because you work with so many people that are kind of doing all kinds of things all hours of the day and what have you. And like, what are your kind of go-tos even when people are going out like that? And they like, because so many people will just like will talk about how, you know, I can't eat. Even sometimes it's not even a time. It's just that it's always this, no, I can't. It's like, well, if your body isn't trained for it, it's going to be uncomfortable at first, but eventually you'll get there. So, and I also feel like sometimes people need a lot more nutrition. But if there is a time thing and they are getting up 10 minutes before they're actually going out for a 30-mile run or whatever, I might be exaggerating a little, but maybe not. How do you personally help your clients with that?
Yeah, well, start off small, right?
Right?
Like you were saying, if somebody is not adapted or trained, their gut is not trained to handle nutrition, then it isn't maybe going to be the most comfortable thing getting started on that. But starting out small, even if it's like a few bites of something, and then you start and you do that consistently, and then if you adapt to that, then you slowly try to work your way up. I also recommend liquid nutrition, because like
Yep.
things like your hydration mixes, or you could do the high carb mixes. I have a lot of my athletes that do like early morning training. They'll do some of the high carb mix because, a serving of that could have 100 grams of carbs or 400 calories. So
Yep.
if you do part of a thing of that, they can usually get that down pretty easily within a short period of time, because that's the thing, is like we have to think of that time window too, and the amount that we're consuming and what we're consuming beforehand. So if you're short on time, I think the main point is there are still options, but it might look differently. Like it's maybe more blended things, more graham crackers, easy to get down things.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's great. And, starting small, I'm a big fan of that as well, especially if they're not completely used to it. I mean, even if you can get in a fraction of what you need, a third of what you really need, and just start building on that, getting the gut kind of used to it. I'm a huge fan of liquid calories too, part of that, because of the fact that if it is a morning run, people are so dehydrated anyway, and depending on the element that they're going out into, or even regardless of the element, the last thing you want to be doing is really trying to run well in a dehydrated state. And I think people don't realize, like it's difficult to have a really good run on 8 ounces of fluid, you know, from that drive state. So liquid calories, I just think are such a great option for pre for sure.
Well, and I think one thing that helps my athletes sometimes is thinking about having a scalable option for your nutrition before your training, depending on what you're doing. Because if sometimes athletes, I think they're like, oh, I'm not going to eat like a bagel and a banana and all this stuff before my 40-minute run. And that's fine. Like, you don't necessarily need that big of a meal before you go and do a 40-minute run. So thinking about having like a scalable way, like maybe you do 2 graham crackers before a really short run. And then for something that's a little bit longer, you do 3 graham crackers plus a banana or hydration mix with that. So you like kind of scale it up depending
Yep.
on what type of training session you're doing.
Yep.
And that sometimes helps athletes because they're like, oh, well, okay, I think I can do that because it doesn't sound as overwhelming, you know? So thinking about, I give a guideline of like zero point 0.5 to 2 grams per kilogram body weight for carbohydrate pre-exercise, and people can kind of think about that to help guide them on the carbohydrate side of things. So, thinking about how you could intentionally change that might be a helpful way for people to consider starting to fuel enough beforehand. And it's also about enough, right? Like
It
I'll
always
have
is.
athletes do long runs, and then like 2 graham crackers before a long run is not enough fuel.
Nope, nope,
So
nope, nope, nope. And like you said, 40-minute, fine. 2 graham crackers are good there. If we're going for 60, we got to add on another thing. If we're going for 90, yeah. So absolutely, totally and completely agree with you. I have a lot of clients that, we were talking about the liquid nutrition for pre, and we're going to be talking about protein a little bit more too. But so many people just think that they need protein like all the time, and the issue is that that's just not going to be the correct fuel for your body to run on. And not only that, but if we're primarily just looking at protein sources like all the time, it gets really expensive, but it's also wasteful. Because I'll have some athletes or newer athletes that I've worked with when I'm kind of reviewing their information, they're doing like a protein shake prior to a run. And I'm like, whoa, and it's all protein, like there's no carbohydrate to it. And again, protein pre, like a little, right? Like you think of a Cliff Bar, which I'm such a fan of just because the ratios there are they're just so great. And so, you think about it, they have 10 grams of protein, for a 45 gram carbohydrate, bar. Like that's excellent. That's just enough to kind of carry it through a little amino acid just to help with that muscle, not break down too much, depending, whatever, for short durations, of course. But that's the whole point is that no, when you're looking at that, that's the ratio. The ratio is carb
Mhm.
protein teeny, versus the other way around. It's after the fact that immediately you still don't need a ton of protein because you really need that carbohydrate to actually repair the muscle. The protein there is just there for a little bit, but then it's the meal like after, getting the protein in or after all of the training, but not necessarily, in and with. I mean, depending if you're doing trail runs, whatever, that changes things in general, during and stuff. But anyway, just wanted to throw that out there too. So I guess, with that being said, then too, we wanted to talk a little bit more then, okay, let's talk about recovery nutrition. And again, what's necessary. And it can be the same thing as I just said for the pre, is that people are just like, oh, I just have a protein shake after my or after my run. And it's like, oh shoot, your body is literally going to turn that protein into usable carbohydrate. There's still not enough there. It creates a stress. Like, no, we need that carb afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest piece that I see too that's missing is like having the carb source with the protein post exercise, looking at 20 to 30 grams high quality protein and then 45 to 60 grams of carbs or 1 to 2 grams per kilogram carbs post exercise. I think the big thing here is there's got to be some context on what type of workout was this?
Mhm.
What are your
Yeah.
goals? Like, I do find some of my athletes then on the other end of things get so stressed if they don't get their thing in within 30 minutes after like a 40-minute easy run. I'm like, if we have a little time here, I think the important thing is it's great that people are thinking about the fueling and trying to get stuff in, but also, what are your goals? What was the workout like? Like if you do a high intensity workout or a long run, maybe you are trying to strive for that 30 to 60 minutes after to try to really start that recovery process right away because there's been more like muscle protein breakdown and damage. Whereas if you do a 30-minute, 40-minute easy run, okay, like you can also strive to get that in, but if it's an hour or like you have a meal like within an hour afterwards or something, that's okay too. It doesn't have to be, you don't always have to have a post-workout
Immediate.
snack
Yes.
immediately. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and thinking about, okay, if I don't have my post-workout snack after a 40-minute run, great, then I'm going to have my meal, and that is still going to have protein in it, 20
Mhm.
to 30 grams of, at least 20 to 30 grams of protein, carbohydrate, fats, all the things. So I like for people to think about it more in that way too, and I'm sure you do too as well, Nicole. It's like we also don't need to get stressed about like not having our shake at 30 minutes with a banana.
No, we do not. After a 4 hour run or we're doing speed for 90 minutes, then yeah, we probably want to get something in sooner than later. But, to your point, we can actually absolutely wait longer for those shorter durations for sure.
Well, and I think option wise, people hear protein shake. You don't have to have a protein shake.
No,
You can
no.
have some kind of you could, well, this will require more planning. You could like bring something in a cooler, like maybe you like hard-boiled eggs and dried
Mm,
fruit or something, or the recovery mixes are nice because they have carb and protein in them.
mm,
So that can be an easy car option for people
yep.
that is non-perishable.
Hmm.
Um, thinking about, like yogurt at home, like if you're at home, yogurt with some granola and fruit or something. Um, you can, I don't know if you have other ideas to add, Nicole, like
Yeah, I mean, again, kind of just depending on what the run was, but I'm kind of a big fan of just like tart cherry juice and a half a scoop of protein powder, honestly, just to kind of get it started. Especially if you have like a lot of my athletes will actually have to like drive somewhere to do their workout, or if they're working on hills, they have to find them. So, just something in the interim, something in the car to get you home to have, the meal or whatever. Something simple, just like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I mean, all of this, the other thing that I like to point out, all of these things, pre and during and post, they count towards your daily nutrition. Like
Yep.
sometimes people are like, well, I'm not gonna, like this protein doesn't count towards my protein goals for the day. And I'm
Yeah,
like, it does
it
actually
does.
count towards your protein goals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I think it's because of this weird, from my experience, it's because of people's relationship with like my fitness pal or something and like
Oh,
where they've been told that like their exercise
they
calories
add
like
in.
don't
Yeah.
count or something weird with the thought process around tracking and
Yeah.
logging is where what I've gathered and experience here, but um But yeah, I mean that leads into the discussion around like daily protein and we got a question about that as well and like how we want to think about getting in enough protein as a endurance athlete and um how to maybe get in enough as a plant-based athlete and then also like how to think about getting in enough like does it have to be like evenly spread throughout the day and thoughts on that as well. So I don't know if you want to start and then I can always add in, but yeah, protein, daily protein tip.
Yeah, well, personally, I do like when people spread their protein out through the day. Sometimes when we have big chunks of protein intake followed by nothing for a very long time and then another big chunk, our bodies like to kind of pull throughout the day to utilize the amino acid. So I am a big fan of kind of spreading that out. And again, but being more strategic around we need a little prior, a little immediately after, but then the bulk of the proteins are coming in on all those other meals, at those other times is essentially, where what I, talk a lot about for getting your protein needs in that way. I think that some people were kind of, asking a lot about like vegan forms of protein and stuff. And sometimes I feel like as an endurance athlete, being vegan kind of can actually make it a little easier. Sometimes like when you really think about it, just because of the amount of carbohydrate that's also in a lot of like the plant-based sources of protein, it just makes it easier sometimes just to recover, to do your and meals afterwards. So things to consider when we're looking at like plant-based proteins, I think, is because some of them can be so high in fiber. Like I'm thinking about beans in particular. You may or may not want beans prior to a run, right? Just because of that, the bulkiness of it. And that can also be a challenge for vegans because of the high amounts of fiber. When we take in a lot of fiber, that can actually inhibit um, a lot of nutrition sometimes too. So we have to be really careful. And because of the fact that it can really be upsetting to that GI, it's a little bit of a slippery slope there. So again, just trying to think of like low fiber around the run and then getting in all the fiber outside of the run. So maybe beans would be something that you would incorporate into your post quite easily. Like even a cup of beans, some rice, maybe some veggies, and right there can give you the ratio of and the proper amount of amino acid, which is essentially what you need is just to complete the amino acid for muscle recovery in general. Um, and otherwise, there's so many, plant-based protein powders out there too that, should they choose to use a little of that in a drink or something prior in a carbohydrate based drink prior to going out, that should be fine. I do find though that some people are actually sensitive to pea protein if we're kind of looking at like the different forms of vegan protein. So I think it's kind of like trying on the different plant proteins and seeing how your gut kind of adjusts to those really.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think how I approach this. Well, just protein in general. Typically, I like to think about dividing an athlete's day into like thirds of the day and thinking about let's try to, say you have your target is 100 grams of protein for the day. Maybe you try to get in like 30-ish grams per third of the day from like 7 to noon, noon to 5, 5 to 10 p.m. And then that can give you flexibility so you don't feel like it has to be perfect at every meal and then
Mhm.
allows for you to get some snacks in as well. And then thinking about there is another common thing I get with protein is people are like, I have to eat 1 gram per pound of body weight
Oh
of
yeah.
protein. And that's just not, I mean, that is literally if you're doing 3 to 4 hours of running a day, maybe, but like most people aren't doing that kind of training. So
No.
I think that's a fitness space uh recommendation that's thrown around.
Hmm.
And really, yeah, so I'm going to throw out some numbers because some people like to hear that 1.6 to up to 2.2 grams per kilogram body weight for protein. 2.2 grams per kilogram is that 1 gram per pound of body weight. So that again is the high end. If you're doing an less than an hour of training, you do not need that much protein. Typically, it's going to be like 30 to 40 grams less than that per day. And so I had a combo with an athlete yesterday that was stressed because they thought they had to do 1 gram per pound. And I was like, no, like this is you don't have to do that. Like, wow, okay, great. I feel so much better because it is a little bit intimidating when you hear that. So clearing up that myth, you don't have to do that. You don't have to spread your protein out completely evenly throughout the day. Advantages being that it does help maybe keep your blood sugar more stable, energy levels more stable, etc. But there was that recent study, I think, that came out like last year or the year before that suggests that if you're hitting your protein target throughout the day, if you have a time period where you're getting in like 90 grams and then the other times you're getting in a smaller amount, it's not that your body's not going to use that protein. So thinking about, okay, I don't need to stress if I don't get in my 30 grams in the morning. You know, is it maybe something I could experiment with and try to improve on? Yeah, but like also, if you can't do that, but you meet your protein needs for the day, okay,
You're gonna
great.
be okay. Yeah, you're gonna be okay. Right. Exactly. Yeah, I agree with that completely.
And
Yeah.
then with the plant-based piece, I think the biggest thing that I recommend is being aware of the volume of plant-based food that you have to eat to get meet your protein needs.
Hmm.
If you and people get bored with plant proteins, and I'm like, well, that's the reality, unfortunately,
Right.
that like
There's
we are
not
limited on our sources
much
here.
we can do. Yeah.
So, I always get asked for like unique plant-based protein snacks or high protein snacks that are plant-based. And I'm like, unique is tough, like
Mhm.
dried edamame is one that I have found people haven't heard of. A third of a cup has like 13 grams of protein in it, or like, like little roasted chickpeas in the oven or something. Um, but yeah, like if you're vegan, like there's not going to be like that much variety that you can
Right.
do. I mean, you could
Right.
throw in plant protein into a muffin recipe or, you know,
Right.
doing things like that, or like a non-dairy yogurt, you add a little protein powder to it, but still,
Mhm.
like then you're still like it's okay to have. I'm not saying you can't have plant protein powders, but like you might have to have two servings of one a day, and that's okay if you're choosing that as your lifestyle.
Mhm.
I think my biggest thing is like if people just rely on protein bars and powders, and then they like don't even eat like tofu or beans or something. I'm
Oh
like,
yeah, no,
no, I think we need to work on that.
Yeah.
If
Yeah,
you do not like tofu, beans, tempeh, those sorts of things as a vegan athlete, you're going to struggle. That is not healthy.
100%. Yeah.
So anyway, that's just kind of some additional things in addition to what you said.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and I think just one kind of final thought here as we're kind of wrapping everything up. There was one question on there that was just sticking out a little bit. And it's in regards to supplements of like supplements for like post run, post strength. And I think just right off the bat, to me, it's like we actually don't need a supplement for recovery. We just really need to have the right combinations in food, and like that is what that is. So I think it's really tough, and it also is kind of an individual basis of like if somebody actually needs to use a supplement for any recovery. I mean, there could be different reasons why you would want to do that, but um, I don't I'm not going to tout that supplements are optimal for our recovery when really it's our overall nutrition. Like our nutrition, our recovery nutrition starts with with breakfast. It starts with the very first thing that we're eating and the very last thing that we're eating. So, to me, I just kind of want to stress that it's getting your nutrition right around everything. A supplement is typically just used because we don't have enough of one thing that we need to supplement something with. Um, you know, or of course, if we are in different hormonal stages in our life, or if we are, trying to put different, strength on, but we have that body frame that we really struggle with that, then maybe we would try and add something if we really, really need to. Like I think of the baseball players that I've worked with. Sometimes we've had to use a certain supplement for that, but that's usually only short term as well. So I don't know. I just wanted to kind of say my little piece around that. But Kylie, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
No, I mean,
I disagree completely.
no, I'm similar in the thought process. And I mean, you don't even technically don't even need a protein powder post workout, you know?
Mhm. Yeah,
So
at all.
so,
Right.
on the other end of things, if people are like, "Oh yeah, I need to spend money on a protein powder," like it's a convenience thing and it can be
Mhm.
really helpful, but it's also not necessary. So like
Mhm.
a lot of athletes don't need any supplements. If you're
Yeah.
eating well and balanced and in the ways that we need, the hard part is life gets in the way, right? It gets busy, we're training, we have all this stuff going on, and then you might need a supplement to help with a certain thing. So that's all, kind of
Yep.
add on to that.
Yep. Agreed.
All right. Well, I think that sort of wraps up protein, right? And pre and post recovery and nutrition. Anything else you guys want to add before we take off?
No, this is fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was. It was fun getting to listen and hear you guys have a lot of similar thoughts in the process of it all, and it's so that's kind of nice confirming too, right? That you do agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just it's fun to because this is something that I see can make such a big difference for athletes and it's not there's not a lot of like huge changes that need to occur either. And we get, I would say these are some of the most common questions we get from athletes. So trying to listen and incorporate these things can be really beneficial to everyone out there.
For
That's
sure, for
right.
sure. Thank you guys for sharing your knowledge and spending some time with me today. I
Thank
Yeah,
will
thank you.
you.
see you again soon.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.